One of the strong manifestations of Avelis, of mourning, is the inability to welcome people. So many wonderful people joining us, both men and ladies. It's a Jewish thing to say, to say a good tavach, to welcome. We don't do that because we are like fresh mourners. It's called an Avelus Chadasha. For an Avelus Yeshana, for an old mourning, we wouldn't do that. And if you think about the fact that the Bayis Sheni, the second temple, was destroyed 70 years after the Common Era, so we're now in 2022. It's almost 2,000 years ago, and yet we call it a new morning. That's a remarkable thing. The Twin Towers is already old news. The assassination of President Kennedy, lahavdil, feels like it's a very long time ago. And here this is something that happened almost 2,000 years ago, and yet we sit on the floor like we're in new mourning. And the question is, how do we do that? There are people in this room that have never been in Eretz Yisrael in their life. And the Beis HaMikdash, our great-great-great-great-great-grandparents didn't enjoy it. So how do we feel such a fresh morning? So they tell a story, it's a true story, of a couple that waited many, many, many years to have a child. And after waiting many years, she finally became pregnant as already way past her middle age. She became pregnant, and she was delivering the baby. The husband was there, all excited, and all of a sudden he sees a lot of traffic going in and out of the delivery room. In and out, one doctor, another doctor, a few doctors. They come to him and they tell him very grimly that it's either his wife or the baby. They can't save both. So the husband looks and says, that's not a question for me. It's my wife's life. Ask her. So the doctors asked her, and she said, my whole life I waited for a child. I want this child so badly. She called in her husband and said, I ask you one thing. When you raise this child, let the child know how much I love the child, that I gave up my life for the child. And they delivered the baby, and on the day of the delivery, they had a funeral. They buried the mother, and the healthy baby boy grew up. The father poured all his love into the boy. It comes the night of his bar mitzvah. The father tells the son, you now become a man, and the first thing you're going to do is you're going to daven for the Amid and say Kaddish for your mama. I want you to pour your heart into this Kaddish, because you're only here because your mama gave her life for you. The boy davens Ma'ariv and comes to Yiskalav Yiskadish Me'rabba, and he zips through the Kaddish, and the father faints. Afterwards, he goes over to his son. He says, I can't understand it. How could you be so cavalier of the Kaddish for your mother? So he says, Father, you're not being fair. I never knew my mother. The only thing I see is a stone in the Beis HaKfaros. How do you expect me to have any feeling for my mother? The Balei Mussar say that's exactly our situation. There was a time that we were so sinful that we were supposed to be destroyed. And instead, the Rabbeinu Shalom said, I'm going to take it out on eitzim v'avonim, on wood and stones. And I'm going to destroy the temple instead of you. I just ask you that once a year, I want you to mourn over that temple, because if it wouldn't have been for that temple, you wouldn't be here. And that's our Tisha B'Av. If it wouldn't have been for the temple, Hashem would have destroyed us. So when we're mourning over the temple, we're like that child that was saying Kaddish for his mother. The Beis HaMikdash saved our lives. And that's the feeling that we're supposed to have, not to just say chaplap, the kinnis, but to realize that it was the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash that allowed us to continue and to thrive and to be who we are. Of course, as we experience Tisha B'Av in its full meaning, we think about all the losses that happened. There were a lot of children of survivors here. There are still survivors in the Kehillah. My shver was in Bergen-Belsen. My stepfather, Saba, suffered in Kazakhstan. But even children of survivors, there's so many of us that have ashes piled up in Auschwitz and other camps. And we think about them also as we sit on the floor and we don't greet people. And as we say the morning of Eicha, we ask Hashem, please, let it be a soif v'kates l'chol tzaraseinu, and the tchila v'rosh l'fidyain nafsheinu. May we all be zeicha b'seilichenu k'remiyas la'atzeinu. We should go standing to our land and see the Binyan Beis HaMikdash b'mher v'yameinu.